This is Alex Mercer. You're listening live to a frequency reserved for those who still notice the world breathing beneath the ordinary. Tonight, I bring you a story that has been unfolding quietly, terrifyingly, and impossibly, an event that defies the natural order, and yet it is happening right outside our doors. Imagine a forest at dusk. The last golden light filters through the canopy, leaves rustling in the evening air. You step inside, the crunch of soil beneath your boots grounding you in familiarity. You measure the height of a young sapling, trace the bark with your hand, breathe in the scent of damp earth and pine. Then you leave, expecting only the usual, the predictable. You return the next morning, and everything has changed. Trees that were saplings now stretch toward the sky, branches sprawling wider than memory allows, leaves forming dense patterns that seem intentional. Roots have shifted. Flowers bloom where they had none before. Every inch of the ground has been rewritten while no one watched. This is no ordinary growth. This is something alive, deliberate, aware. Reports are coming in from listeners across the Northeast Corridor, from rural towns to small cities bordering dense woodlands. Lydia from Vermont wrote, "Alex, I walked past Hemlock Ridge yesterday evening. Today, the saplings I measured are taller than my truck, taller than anything I've seen before. I swear I heard the soil groaning like it was stretching." Michael in Oregon sent a recording from his hike. In it, you can hear a strange, low thrum beneath the usual forest sounds, something like the heartbeat of the ground itself, followed by a subtle snapping, as if branches are extending faster than physics allows. He said, "I've walked these trails for 20 years. Never have I felt the woods alive like this. Scientists are scrambling for explanations. Dendrologists, tree experts, say the rate of growth is biologically impossible unless some unknown force is at work. Biochemists studying soil samples are finding levels of microbial activity far beyond natural capacity, enzymes and compounds that suggest the trees are feeding off something other than sunlight and water. There's speculation about magnetic anomalies, radiation, even something sentient. But it remains speculation. The world has slipped its leash, and we are only beginning to notice. More unnerving than the growth itself is how the forest seems to remember. Reports now number in the hundreds of plants reacting to human touch, not merely swaying in the wind, but trembling with recognition, as if every step and every hand has been recorded. Samuel in North Carolina called me hours ago. "Alex, I bent down to pick a fallen pine cone, and the fern beside it recoiled, like it knew I'd been here before. My shoes, my scent, my touch, it was cataloged. Every plant in that clearing responded." Walking through these spaces, you feel watched, not by eyes, not by predators, but by awareness itself. It is subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but the effect accumulates. People report anxiety, a primal fear that rises without cause. Those brave enough to study it directly note that vines curl toward people they recognize, leaves shiver in acknowledgement of presence, and even the undergrowth shifts as if making room or warning someone. It is memory without a brain, awareness without a nervous system. And it is terrifying because it is unexplainable. For those near these forests or dense gardens, avoid unnecessary interaction. Track your steps. Repeated contact provokes stronger reactions. Branches blocking paths, ferns curling around ankles, undergrowth rearranging itself. Hikers and survivalists should leave markers and not rely solely on familiar trails. Water sources may shift overnight, and what was once a clear path may become impassable in hours. Botanists documenting these phenomena should remain cautious. The forest is learning. It is remembering. Eyewitnesses continue sending videos that defy explanation. A hiker in Pennsylvania recorded a clearing where flowers bloom and wilt within minutes, petals unfurling with mathematical precision. In another clip, a grove of pines bends toward the east and then snaps back, rearranging themselves while the camera rolls. Every frame challenges our understanding of reality. Families are retreating from forests they once loved. Children are afraid of the gardens where they played. Researchers are abandoning studies, feeling watched, judged, and unsettled. In the quiet, whispers arrive. People claim to hear rustling that sounds like words, leaves brushing like sighs, soil that hums with anticipation. Some dismiss it as paranoia, others know it as instinct. Those who have walked these forests recently know there is a life here we do not understand, and we have no right to intrude. Tonight, as I broadcast into your homes, cars, and cabins, remember this. The world is older and stranger than our schedules, our maps, and our calendars allow. Forests grow, plants remember, and we are guests here, observed by something silent, deliberate, and impossibly patient. Keep notes, stay aware, and if you must wander, wander lightly. Leave no mark that cannot vanish. The next dawn may rewrite the world while you sleep, and you may never see it coming. This is Alex Mercer on the frequency that listens back. If you're out there, tread softly. Every leaf has memory. Every branch has a witness. The forest does not forget. It waits, it grows, and it watches. Tonight, we are the ones being observed. This is Alex Mercer, and you're tuned to a frequency reserved for those who notice what most people overlook. The quiet, impossible, and sometimes terrifying pulse of the natural world. Tonight, we talk about forces that refuse to yield, that persist beyond expectation, beyond time itself. Imagine seeds buried for decades, perhaps centuries, forgotten in a drawer, a garden bed, or the cracked soil of a desolate field. Life itself seems to have moved on. Seasons have passed. Civilizations have risen and fallen. Yet these seeds, these unassuming vessels of potential, wait. And then, at their own whim, they awaken. A sprout pierces the soil where none should exist, leaves unfurling in defiance of neglect. These seeds refuse to die. You plant them, you forget them, yet they insist on life. There is no timetable, no rhythm we can follow. And as unsettling as it is wondrous, it reminds us that patience in nature is infinite, and the forces of persistence do not answer to human schedules. Listeners from across the Midwest are reporting gardens sprouting in the most improbable places. Julia from Kansas writes, I planted morning glories in my backyard 10 years ago. I moved to a new home. I didn't water them for years. Last week, one of the vines emerged through a crack in my patio. It's 20 feet long now, climbing my fence like it's been plotting every day I've been away. Another message arrived from Sam in New Mexico. Alex, my grandfather collected desert lupine seeds back in the 1920s. I found them in an old jar last month. I planted one just to see if it would germinate. I left it alone thinking it wouldn't. Yesterday, it bloomed, a perfect purple flower, in soil that hasn't seen rain in weeks. It shouldn't be alive, but it is. This is not exaggeration, not folklore. It is persistence manifesting in ways that humankind rarely witnesses, and it is both beautiful and terrifying. Scientists are equally baffled. Seed biologists describe these phenomena as extreme examples of longevity, dormancy, and germination triggers that defy conventional understanding. Some seeds are designed to resist decay, to withstand fire, drought, frost, and centuries of neglect. But what researchers cannot explain is the timing, the spontaneity, the apparent choice. Why emerge now, after decades of silence? Chemical analysis shows nothing unusual. Dormancy appears natural, yet unpredictable. Environmental triggers, temperature, moisture, light, explain only part of it. And when hundreds of reports pour in from across the country, it becomes impossible to dismiss as coincidence. We are witnessing persistence that feels intentional, a will to live that outlasts human memory and human planning. From a practical standpoint, those who cultivate gardens or live near wildlands should take note. Seeds that refuse to die can become invasive without warning. What begins as a single plant in a forgotten corner can expand, dominate, and transform landscapes in weeks. Maintain awareness of old plots, check neglected soil, and consider the implications of dormant seeds in compost, old flower beds, and abandoned lots. They are reminders that nature's patience outlasts ours, and sometimes the rules we think govern life do not apply. And then there are the vines that move on their own. Perhaps you've walked past a garden, returned later, and noticed the subtle difference. Fences that were clear now carry creeping green fingers. Windows once bare are circled by curling tendrils. It is not merely growth, it is movement, deliberate, cautious, almost intelligent. Vines that seek, that pursue, that adapt. And the first reaction, for anyone who notices, is unease. You feel watched, not by eyes, not by predators, but by calculation itself. Listener reports flood in with a tone of disbelief that quickly turns to fear. Emma in Oregon tells me, "Alex, I left my backyard for a week. When I returned, my jasmine vines had wrapped themselves around my porch railing in a way I didn't train them to do. They seemed deliberate. Like they were reaching for the light, yes, but also for something beyond it. I can't explain the way they moved." Carlos in Virginia describes a creeping vine that adjusted itself around his fence post, bending and twisting as though measuring each curve. "I swear, Alex, it avoided my garden gnome. It knew where not to touch. It looked aware." Botanists and plant physiologists are racing to understand what this means. Is it growth influenced by light and gravity alone? Possibly. But the speed and direction, the selective avoidance of objects, the reaction to human presence, all suggest a level of environmental responsiveness that challenges current models. Some hypothesize that these vines are highly sensitive to vibration, sound, or even chemical cues we cannot detect. Others suggest an emergent intelligence, a networked awareness that allows plants to respond to their surroundings with intention. And while this remains speculative, it is impossible to ignore the effect it has on the people living among these gardens. Fear, fascination, anxiety, awe, they coexist in the same glance at the creeping green. From a survival perspective, those near these phenomena must treat them with caution. Do not attempt to remove vines hastily. They adapt. Cutting or disturbing them may provoke more aggressive movement. Observe patterns, mark boundaries, and if possible, document changes over days. Understand that these are not merely plants. They are forces. Their persistence and adaptability make them unpredictable. A garden that seemed familiar yesterday may feel foreign, even threatening, today. And yet, there is a human element to all of this. Families report arguments over whether to intervene, whether to destroy the plants or let them grow. Children are drawn to their uncanny behavior, fascinated and terrified at once. Gardeners feel pride, horror, and humility. Scientists oscillate between exhilaration and dread. Humanity is confronting its own limitations, realizing that life can exist and thrive without our understanding, without our permission, and without regard for convenience or control. These seeds, these vines, are lessons in patience, persistence, and presence, forces older than us and far beyond our dominion. As you listen tonight, consider your relationship with the world around you. Step lightly. Watch carefully. Note the places where green defies expectation. The next time you plant or leave soil untended, or return to a garden after years, remember, life waits, life watches, life adapts, and life refuses to yield. The seeds will sprout, the vines will move, and when you think you have control, you will discover the truth. You have only been a witness. This is Alex Mercer, broadcasting into the living world, reminding you that nature has a patience we cannot measure, a persistence we cannot break, and a presence that will not be ignored. Keep your eyes open, your steps light, and remember, what sleeps may awaken, what grows may pursue, and what seems inert may be more alive than you dare to imagine. This is Alex Mercer, and tonight we delve into the uncanny, the living music and unrelenting defiance of the natural world. You may think you know a forest, but some forests know more than you realize. Imagine standing among the trees on a quiet evening, the air still, the sky dimming with the last light of day. You think you hear the wind, perhaps the rustle of leaves, but then you realize it is more than that. There is a resonance, a harmony threaded through every branch, every leaf. The trees are singing, not metaphorically, not poetically, but truly in ways science is struggling to explain. They hum, whisper, vibrate. Some say it is the wind, some say it is the collective movement of leaves. But listeners who have spent nights beneath these canopies insist it is much more than that. It is mournful. It is joyful. It is intimate. It is almost human. Emma from Vermont writes, "Alex, I thought I was losing my mind. I walked into a grove near my home, expecting silence, and the trees, they hummed, low, almost vibrating through my chest. I could feel the notes resonate, as if they were aware of me, and my pulse quickened. I stayed for hours listening, and when I left, I could still hear them in my mind." Another listener, Raj in Oregon, reports, "I brought my daughter to the forest one evening. She stopped mid-step, eyes wide, and whispered, 'They're singing for me.' I thought it was her imagination until I felt it too. It was unlike any wind or bird song. It carried emotion, something ancient and aching. Scientists call it bioacoustic resonance, a phenomenon where plants vibrate at particular frequencies under environmental stimuli. Trees respond to wind, humidity, and even subtle seismic activity, producing low-frequency sounds that humans can sometimes perceive. But the reports we are receiving suggest something beyond measurable resonance, something almost like communication, as if the trees are expressing, warning, or mourning. There are documented instances of harmonic vibrations triggering emotional responses in humans, But these forests seem to push the effect to something visceral, something that lingers in your soul. And yet, as beautiful as it is, there is tension. Some who have visited these groves feel an unexplainable anxiety, a sense of being observed, as if the trees are aware of more than we are willing to admit. From a survival perspective, listeners should take care when entering these forests alone. The emotional intensity can be disorienting, and hours can pass in what feels like minutes. Stay with companions, mark your paths, and trust your instincts. But also allow yourself the experience. Witnessing this phenomenon may be as close as we get to understanding the inner life of trees, to experiencing a world older and more sentient than our own. And then there are the flowers blooming out of season. Snow still clings to the earth. Frost lingers on windows. Cold bites at exposed skin. Yet petals unfold defiantly, impossibly. Daffodils in December, cherry blossoms in January, lupines through frost. Flowers that refuse to obey the calendar, the seasons, the rules that we thought bound life itself. Listeners are calling in from across North America with reports of backyard gardens, city parks, and forgotten wildflower fields where color erupts against all logic. Lena in New York wrote, "I was shoveling my driveway after the first snow when I noticed pink blooms emerging from under the ice. I knelt, touched them, and I swear I felt them pulse with warmth, as if life itself was laughing at winter." Another listener, Miguel from Calgary, sent a photo of frost-covered tulips. He writes, "I thought I had imagined them. I've lived here my whole life. Nothing blooms this early. And yet, there they were, defiant, alive." Botanists explain that microclimates, genetic anomalies, and environmental triggers can sometimes cause plants to bloom irregularly. But these instances are multiplying in ways that seem almost purposeful. Flowers are responding to subtle shifts in temperature, light cycles, and perhaps even signals from surrounding plant networks. But the emotional impact, the sense that life refuses to be constrained, cannot be measured scientifically. Humans respond not just with awe, but with a mix of fear, reverence, and humility. These blooms remind us that the natural world is neither predictable nor subordinate to human schedules. For gardeners and those who live near these sudden bursts of life, there are considerations beyond wonder. Out-of-season blooms can be vulnerable to frost, pests, and environmental stress. Protective measures, such as gentle covers, mulching, or careful watering, may be necessary to preserve these resilient yet fragile displays. Observe them, document them, but remember that nature is in command, not us. What blossoms against the odds today may be gone tomorrow, and its survival will depend on more than human intervention. Emotionally, these phenomena, the singing trees, the flowers that defy winter, converge in one profound lesson. Life persists, communicates, and insists on being noticed, even when we are distracted or unaware. These are reminders of the hidden forces around us, of a living world with rhythms, voices, and choices beyond human understanding. They are beautiful, they are disquieting, and they are relentless. As we continue tonight, I invite you to pause, to listen closely to the wind in your own surroundings. Perhaps you will hear it, the harmonic resonance of the ancient, the defiant bloom of impossible life. Perhaps you will recognize in ways that words cannot capture the message that these phenomena carry, that life persists beyond expectation, beyond control, beyond us. This is Alex Mercer, and tonight we descend beneath the surface, literally and figuratively, into phenomena that blur the line between life as we know it and life as we barely understand. Imagine standing in your backyard, your neighborhood, even a city park, unaware of the movement beneath your feet. The soil shifts. A stone path cracks, foundations groan. You swear you hear faint, deliberate stretching noises, but no earthquake has struck. No construction disturbs the earth. What you are witnessing is the slow, inexorable migration of roots that crawl. Roots that move as if they have intention, intelligence, a purpose beyond nourishment. It is not mere growth. It is pursuit, expansion, presence. Listener reports are pouring in. James from Pennsylvania writes, "Alex, I've seen my flower beds subtly shift over months. I thought it was my imagination until the roots lifted a stone pathway near my porch. Nothing else has moved. I checked. No animals, no water damage. Just roots, creeping into places they shouldn't exist." Another call from Carla in Oregon, her voice trembling. "I dug a small trench for irrigation, and I swear the roots moved as I watched. It was as if they were avoiding me, adjusting their path. I felt watched, like the earth itself had a consciousness." Scientists are puzzled. Some suggest an extraordinary form of thigmotropism, plants responding to touch and obstacles with extreme precision. But these examples defy known biology. The roots are deliberate. They explore, they circumvent, they adapt. From a structural standpoint, property damage is minimal at first, subtle, cracked walkways, lifted tiles, slight soil upheavals. But left unchecked, these roots can infiltrate pipes, foundations, and infrastructure, demonstrating a terrifying persistence. Survival advice: monitor your trees and plants, install root barriers, and document movement. And more importantly, respect it. There is an intelligence in these silent crawlers that we do not fully comprehend. Now consider the garden that heals itself. Not metaphorically, literally. You prune a branch, snap a stem, and by the next morning, the wound is sealed, the growth doubled, the plant thriving in a way biology would call impossible. Gardens across North America are exhibiting this phenomenon. Marissa in Seattle emails, "I clipped a dying branch from my rose bush. By dawn, the branch had grown back, stronger than before. I touched it again, and the new growth quivered under my fingers. It felt alive." This is more than resilience. It is active adaptation. Some botanists speculate accelerated cell regeneration or plant biofeedback mechanisms, but the scale and speed of regeneration exceed what current science can explain. And it's not just about healing, it is about assertion. These gardens survive, adapt, evolve, and in some cases may be testing human interaction, our limits, and our assumptions about control over life. For gardeners listening, approach with care. Avoid excessive pruning. Observe. Record. Do not underestimate the intelligence, the determination of these living systems. And then there are the leaves that shine at night. Under moonlight, under darkness unbroken by streetlights or fireflies, the leaves shimmer with a faint inner glow. Some believe bioluminescence is at play. Others, though, whisper of forces far older, guardians, sentinels, or something even more enigmatic. Listener reports describe leaves that pulse, subtly brighten when approached, dim when left alone, as if aware of human attention. Ethan from Maine calls, "I walked beneath a maple at 2 a.m., and the leaves lit softly in response to my steps. I felt like I had entered another dimension, like the trees were greeting me or warning me." Nighttime observers describe a mixture of awe and terror, a sense of walking through a dream that is not entirely benign. From a scientific lens, bioluminescence in plants is rare but documented. However, the synchronicity, responsiveness, and sheer scale reported here suggest either an undiscovered species, an environmental trigger beyond modern knowledge, or a phenomenon bordering on the supernatural. Survival or interaction advice: tread lightly. Do not attempt to harvest or damage these plants. Observe from a distance. Record patterns. The glowing may be harmless, but the underlying intelligence, the subtle awareness implied, demands caution. Emotionally, these three phenomena, crawling roots, self-healing gardens, and nocturnal glowing leaves, are connected by one inescapable truth. The natural world is neither passive nor predictable. It moves around us, adapts to us, and sometimes asserts itself in ways that challenge our understanding, our science, and our confidence as stewards of the earth. Many listeners report an almost spiritual reaction: awe mixed with fear, fascination tinged with vulnerability. Some awaken to a sense that life itself is watching, evaluating, and responding to human interference. For those of you listening at home tonight, I invite you to step outside if you dare. Feel the soil under your feet. Observe your gardens at night. Watch your plants in the morning. Witness, document, respect. These are not mere curiosities. They are lessons in persistence, adaptation, and intelligence beyond human comprehension. They are reminders that life cannot be fully controlled, predicted, or tamed. And they are reminders that we are not alone, even in the smallest patch of soil, the quietest garden, the deepest night. Let's begin with the trees that know the weather. Before a storm touches the land, before lightning flashes or winds rise, these trees respond. They bend subtly. Their leaves quiver, branches shiver, not from wind, but as if they themselves feel the coming forces. It is as if the forest has sensors built into its very fibers, tuned to rhythms and signals invisible to human eyes. Listeners across the country have shared stories of trees that act before the storm, almost prophetically. Sarah from Michigan writes, "I was walking my dog last week when the wind was barely a whisper. My maple, a tree I've known for 20 years, leaned in a strange way, its leaves trembling like warning flags. By the time the storm hit, I realized it had been signaling the worst gusts, minutes before the weather report even predicted them. Scientists suggest trees release chemicals in anticipation of stress, perhaps communicating with each other through root networks or fungal mycelium. But eyewitnesses report a nuance beyond science, trees that seem aware, alive in anticipation, almost sentient in their warning. If you live in storm-prone areas, it's wise to take note, observe your trees. Their subtle movements might be your earliest alert, long before Doppler radar can register a shift. And then, there's the forest that consumes shadows. Walk its paths at dusk or night, and notice how your own shadow thins, fades, or simply disappears. Darkness is absorbed, diffused, manipulated, as if some unseen hand within the forest selectively swallows what it pleases. Listener reports are unsettling. Marco from Oregon recalls, "I was hiking with my niece. She ran ahead, laughing. I looked down, and my shadow was gone. I felt exposed, as though the forest itself was watching, judging. I've never felt fear like it. Some ecologists speculate this may be due to unusual light scattering or bioluminescent fungi, but the consistency of these accounts across multiple regions suggests something more profound, an environment actively interacting with human perception. Surviving a walk through these woods requires mindfulness. Move slowly, avoid startling the environment, and remain aware of how the forest responds to your presence. Respect its ability to observe and perhaps influence you. Finally, consider the phenomenon of branches that rearrange themselves. Step away for an hour and return, only to find that what was once familiar is now utterly transformed. Branches twist into new angles, form patterns, even natural doorways or frames where none existed. It is as if the trees themselves are experimenting, communicating, or composing a language older than memory. Listener accounts are chillingly vivid. Emma from Vermont reports, "I went to photograph an old oak, and when I returned, its branches had shifted. It looked alive, almost playful, but with a knowing, deliberate intelligence. I felt like an intruder in a gallery of living sculpture." Botanists are fascinated, proposing growth response to light, stress, or environmental changes. But the rapidity and intentionality reported here exceeds conventional explanations. For those documenting such phenomena, patience is key. Observe, photograph, and return later. Attempting to interfere or prune may provoke unpredictable responses. Emotionally, these forests, trees anticipating storms, shadows vanishing, branches rearranging, demand humility. There is awe in witnessing life so ancient, so intricately attuned to its surroundings, and dread in realizing how little control we possess. They remind us that nature is not a passive backdrop, but a dynamic, reactive force, capable of thought, or at least behaviors that seem like thought. It's a confrontation with our own assumptions of dominance, a call to respect forces far beyond our comprehension. For anyone venturing into such environments, caution is essential. Observe without intrusion. Document what you see. Understand that these forests may be communicating, testing, and watching. They are alive in ways we cannot fully measure. Their movements, their manipulations, their anticipations are invitations and warnings. Good evening, listeners. This is Alex Mercer, and tonight, we step into a world that refuses to be tamed. A world where nature does not merely exist. It thinks, adapts, and communicates in ways that defy everything we thought we knew. Tonight's broadcast will take you through fields, forests, and gardens where plants are no longer silent. They move, they respond, and sometimes they watch. Let's start with something that seems almost whimsical at first glance, yet carries a quiet, unsettling intelligence. The grass that grows in shapes. Picture walking across a sun-drenched field, the wind teasing the blades, when suddenly you notice lines, circles, geometric forms emerging with deliberate intent. One listener, Daniel from Colorado, writes, "I stepped into a meadow that I'd walked countless times. By morning, the grass had formed concentric circles around a single oak. It wasn't trampled. It wasn't wind damage. It was arranged. Scientists attempt explanations. Microclimates, soil variations, animal paths, but the regularity, the precision of these forms suggests something more. Patterns appear that are mathematically perfect, circles nested within circles, straight lines slicing through irregular patches, as if the land itself is communicating in a silent code. If you come across such a field, do not disturb it. Walk carefully, observe, and document. There is evidence that these patterns are not random, and that interference can disrupt what may be a centuries-old natural system. From subtle shapes, we move to astonishing acceleration, fruits that ripen almost instantly. Imagine picking a fruit, an apple, a pear, a plum, and returning the next day to find it fully ripe, juicy, vibrant. The growth we think of as slow, gradual, measured by weeks and months, is compressed into hours. Julia from Florida writes to me, "I plucked a cherry from my backyard tree in the morning. By the next evening, the fruit had doubled in size, its skin glossy, its aroma intoxicating. I could almost hear it growing." Botanists speculate on hyperactive growth hormones, extreme environmental conditions, or underground energy flows, but the speed is startling and, frankly, terrifying. If plants can accelerate life so drastically in one corner of your garden, what else is happening out of our view? This is a reminder that nature is patient, but also opportunistic, capable of bending the rules we assume govern life. For those tending gardens or orchards in these areas, vigilance is key. Monitor soil, water, and light closely. Sudden growth may indicate underlying ecological shifts you cannot see. And yet, even beyond these visible marvels, the communication of plants remains the most unsettling. Step into any forest and pay attention. The slightest flicker of a leaf, a subtle shift in color, an almost imperceptible chemical release. These are not random. Plants are speaking to one another, forming networks beneath our awareness, responding to threats, signals, even human presence. Listener Raj from Ontario recounts, "I walked through a grove of pines. I noticed that when one pine branch shifted slightly, others nearby reacted almost immediately, bending toward the light differently, leaves trembling in unison. It was as if they were sharing information. Scientists have observed chemical signaling, root networks intertwined with fungi, mycorrhizal networks that transmit nutrients and warnings. But eyewitnesses insist the phenomenon goes beyond what we can measure. It feels intentional. A forest that watches, a web of life alive with consciousness we cannot touch but can sense. When walking among such forests, take care to move deliberately. Sudden intrusion or noise may trigger responses from plants you do not fully understand. Respect their language. They are listening, always. Finally, consider the intimacy of the flower that follows you. Imagine standing in a garden, only to realize that a single bloom twists its petals to face you, no matter where you move. Not once, but continuously. Listener Sophia from New York writes, "I moved from the rose bush to the daffodils, and they all seemed to turn toward me, almost like a silent acknowledgement of my presence. It was beautiful and deeply unsettling. I felt observed." Biologists call this phototropism, plants moving toward light. But these movements occur even when the sun, or other light sources, cannot account for them. Something within the plant, something responsive, is aware of us. For anyone exploring such spaces, remain calm and do not touch indiscriminately. Understand that a garden like this is alive in ways that are intimate, aware, and patient. Observe, document, and above all, do not interfere. The plants are in control, and we are visitors in their world. Tonight, listeners, these phenomena, shapes in grass, instantaneous fruit, silent communication, flowers that watch, are a call to humility. They remind us that nature is not passive. It thinks, adapts, reacts, and observes. Our gardens, forests, and fields are alive in ways we cannot fully measure, capable of astonishing beauty and subtle menace. They challenge us to slow down, to listen, to watch, and to remember that life around us is far older, far wiser, and far stranger than we ever imagined. So tonight, as you walk through your backyard, your neighborhood park, or even your local forest, pay attention. Watch the shapes forming under your feet. Notice the ripening fruit. Observe subtle flickers in leaves, and if a flower turns to face you, do not feel alone. You are in the presence of life that is awake, aware, and infinitely patient. And while it may not speak our language, it is communicating with the oldest, quietest intelligence in the world, the intelligence of survival, adaptation, and observation itself. A patch of green climbing up a stone wall, a delicate filigree of life seemingly clinging against reason. But as observers, curious hikers, gardeners, urban explorers return day after day, the phenomenon becomes undeniable. A listener, Mara from Portland, writes to us, "I was exploring an abandoned warehouse downtown when I looked up and realized the entire ceiling was covered in moss, not hanging from water leaks or in shadows, but solid, flat ceilings. It was as if the floor had risen above me, reversing reality. I touched it, and it was soft, alive, impossibly thriving where no soil existed." And she's not alone. Across the country, reports flood in from homes, abandoned buildings, rock faces, even city sidewalks. Moss, resilient and patient, is no longer content with the ground. It is claiming the air, the walls, the ceilings, vertical, inverted, unstoppable. Scientists are baffled, of course. Experiments point to extraordinary adaptations. Spores that latch with microscopic suction, moisture harvesting mechanisms, a slow but persistent ability to anchor where gravity should prevent growth. Biologists theorize that some species may be responding to unseen magnetic or structural cues in buildings and rocks, or that they are evolving new ways to access nutrients through the air. But theory only goes so far when eyewitnesses send photographs, videos, and first-hand accounts that defy laboratory explanations. The moss is alive. It moves. It spreads. And it does so with intent. Consider the human experience of this phenomenon. Stepping into a hallway lined with gravity-defying moss is disorienting, even unnerving. A visitor named Thomas from Vermont describes it. "At first I laughed. It looked like someone had planted green wallpaper upside down. But after a few minutes, the ceiling seemed closer. My head felt lighter, my balance off, and the smell, faintly damp but intoxicating, was everywhere. I felt watched, not by people but by life itself. Every fiber seemed alive and aware. It's a sensation that unmoors the mind. Our perception of what is above, below, and within reach becomes unreliable. The floor is no longer the only home for life. The walls, the ceilings, the very air itself has been claimed by patient green invaders. For those encountering this phenomenon, caution is advised. Moss, while beautiful, holds unseen risks. Some species harbor spores that can aggravate allergies or respiratory systems. Others may conceal slippery surfaces or unstable structures beneath. When exploring these spaces, use gloves, sturdy footwear, and observe carefully. Do not attempt to remove or disturb large patches. Some scientists suggest the moss may be more than plant life. It may be a silent network, communicating through spores and microscopic filaments, responding to movement and touch. Our interference may provoke consequences we cannot predict. Emotionally, the moss challenges us. There's wonder, certainly, at life's ability to persist and adapt against impossible odds. But there is also a quiet terror. To see the walls, the ceilings, the structures we take for granted reclaimed by life is to confront our own impermanence. This green growth does not demand attention. It quietly insists on it. A listener, Emilio from New Mexico, confesses, "I couldn't sleep for nights after visiting an old train depot covered in moss. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the green creeping over me, the walls, the air, everywhere. It wasn't malevolent exactly, but it was conscious, patient, watching." And perhaps that is the most unsettling truth. Life can exist, adapt, and spread beyond our comprehension, and it does so whether we witness it or not. Tonight, as you move through your homes, your cities, your forests, consider this. The ground is no longer the only measure of life. Look up. Look around. Watch the moss that climbs where it should not. Respect it. Study it. Learn from it. And remember, in the quiet patience of these creeping greens, we glimpse a force older and more adaptable than human certainty. It is slow, relentless, and utterly indifferent to our rules. Nature has found a new path, and it starts on the walls above our heads. This is Alex Mercer, reminding you that life is more inventive, more audacious, and more persistent than we dare to imagine. Keep your eyes open. The moss is moving, and tonight perhaps it is moving toward us. Let's begin with the levitating seed. Imagine for a moment standing in a quiet meadow just as dawn breaks. The mist curls over the grass, and the world feels suspended between night and day. And then, almost imperceptibly, you notice it. A tiny seed, not falling, not rolling, not drifting in a breeze, but hanging, hovering, a few inches above the soil, as if the air itself has become a cradle for life. You reach out with a hand, and it flutters, like a heartbeat suspended in space, and then settles gently to the ground, not because it was forced, but because it chose where it would root. We've received letters from listeners who have witnessed this. Isabel from Quebec writes, "I was planting my spring garden when I saw a seed rise, just for a second, hovering above the soil. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and it happened again. Then it fell, exactly where I was about to plant another seed. I couldn't explain it. It felt deliberate, almost sentient. And she isn't alone. Across forests and gardens worldwide, observers describe seeds that float briefly, like a leaf caught in invisible currents of choice. They hover, they drift, they settle, and in that act, life asserts itself with a quiet, miraculous decision. Scientists are scratching their heads. Some suggest micro-air currents, electrostatic charges, or even minute magnetic interactions in certain soils. But these explanations fall short when the phenomenon is repeated indoors, in controlled environments, away from wind or human disturbance. Biologists whisper of an unknown mechanism, an innate sensing, a micro-mobility at the cellular level that allows the seed, for a brief moment, to resist gravity, to choose its ground. And for those of us watching it happen, the effect is staggering. To see life pause, hover, decide, it feels like witnessing the universe exhale. Emotionally, it's overwhelming. Many people report a deep sense of awe, a trembling realization that life itself has agency beyond our understanding. Some, like a listener named Haruto in Japan, admit to tears. I saw it float, and I felt the weight of the universe in that moment. A single seed deciding where to live, and I felt like everything else in life had a choice too, if only we could see it. It's beautiful, yes, but it's also unsettling. A world where life can choose defies the human need for predictability. It leaves us breathless, uncertain, yet undeniably alive. Now, as we move from seeds to giants, let us talk about trees that mark time in ways no human clock can measure. Ordinary trees give us rings, a measure of years, a quiet history of seasons past. But these are extraordinary. In forests scattered across the globe, certain trees record moments beyond mere climate or growth cycles. They seem to absorb events, emotions, even the pulse of the land itself. Step near one and the air feels different. The bark hums with memory. The rings inside, visible only to those brave enough to examine them, shift, bend, compress, expand, capturing not just the years, but the essence of what happens around them. Listeners write to us in awe. Lena from the Scottish Highlands recalls, I touched one of these trees and felt something like vibrations from decades ago. Storms, laughter, the quiet passing of life. It was as though the tree remembered everything, and I, for a moment, was part of that memory. And scientists studying dendrochronology, tree ring analysis, are confounded. How can a single tree record a century's events at varying speeds? How can rings appear in bursts, then stall for decades, corresponding to floods, earthquakes, and even human conflict? Some theorize a quantum or geomagnetic link, a sensitivity to energy flows that we barely comprehend. Others quietly admit, we don't know. Yet. Emotionally, standing beside these trees is humbling. You feel time bending around you. You confront your own fragility and impermanence. A listener named Carlos from Brazil describes, I stood under one of these giants for hours. I could feel the past pressing around me, my ancestors, the land before me, the storms and celebrations I'll never witness. It was beautiful, terrifying, and comforting all at once. Survival psychologists suggest that time-perceiving trees may even influence our emotional states, calming the mind, providing a sense of continuity when human life feels fleeting and chaotic. For those lucky, or perhaps chosen, enough to encounter these phenomena, there are lessons. With levitating seeds, observe without interfering, document, photograph, but respect their silent will. Let life make its choices. Sometimes survival is not just about human effort, but understanding when to step back. With time-marking trees, walk gently, speak softly, touch with care. Their memory may be fragile, their perception vast. Take notes, record your feelings. But remember, you are a guest in a consciousness that exceeds your own. Tonight, as you sit by your window, perhaps in your garden, or wandering quietly in the forest, Consider this. Life is patient, inventive, and at times astonishingly autonomous. Seeds may float before they settle. Trees may bear witness to centuries in a way we cannot comprehend. The world is older, stranger, and infinitely more alive than we often give it credit for. This is Alex Mercer, reminding you that to observe is to participate. To witness is to acknowledge. And sometimes, just sometimes, life decides to show us that it holds more power, more grace, and more mystery than even we, with all our science and curiosity, can imagine. Keep your eyes open, listeners. The seeds may lift, and the trees may bend time. But tonight, we watch, and we listen, and we remember. Good evening, my friends. Alex Mercer here, broadcasting live once again into the quiet corners of your evening, where you might be sitting alone or perhaps walking beneath the canopy of a forest, or staring out across your own backyard. Tonight, we continue our journey into the strange, the impossible, and the breathtakingly alive. Tonight, we linger in two worlds at once. One where seeds defy gravity, hovering in suspended choice before settling, and another where trees do not merely live, they remember, they record, they witness, and through them, time itself bends. Let us begin once more with the levitating seed. Picture yourself kneeling in a patch of soil you've tended with care, perhaps planting vegetables, or flowers meant to brighten a winter-weary garden. You reach for a seed, expecting the simple weight of nature's rules. And then it happens. The seed lifts, not tossed, not blown, not nudged by any visible force, but it hovers, defies gravity, if only for a heartbeat. It floats, suspended between the earth and the air, between choice and chance. And in that stillness, your pulse quickens. Life is asserting its own will. It is saying, I will choose where I root. Not you, not the wind, not the sun, I. We've received countless accounts from listeners who have witnessed this phenomenon firsthand. A young man named Elias from Oregon writes, I thought I was dreaming. One moment I was sowing radishes. The next, a seed hovered above the dirt for 3, maybe 4 seconds. It wasn't random. I swear it was looking, deciding, as though it could feel me watching. And there's Marisol in Mexico City. I've seen it happen in my own greenhouse. Every day, for a week, one tiny tomato seed would rise before dropping exactly where it wanted. It's unnerving. Beautiful, yes, but there's a feeling of intelligence in the air, something older than human understanding. Scientists attempt to explain it. Electrostatics, minute air currents, cellular turgor changes. But even controlled experiments fail to replicate what people are seeing in natural environments. Some researchers quietly admit, we may be witnessing a form of agency in life we didn't know existed. Agency. That word hangs heavy in the mind. Life in its smallest form, deciding where to exist, when to root, when to grow, and doing so without our interference. The universe, in these moments, reminds us that humans are not the authors of all choice, all life, all destiny. And here is the part that cuts the deepest. Witnessing such a seed floating, hovering, choosing its place fills you with awe, but it also leaves you hollow, trembling in your awareness of your own limitations. It's a reminder that life does not always follow our rules, that even the smallest forms can assert a will far beyond what we can control, And for those moments, standing over that hovering seed, you feel both the miracle and the terror of it. Because if a seed can choose where it lives, what else might the natural world be quietly deciding, right beneath our feet, beyond our perception? Now, as the sun rises, or sets, depending on where you are, let us turn to the giants of our world, the trees that mark time in ways no human clock can measure. These are not the ordinary oaks or maples you see every day. These are the trees that bear witness to centuries, recording events in the rings beneath their bark that defy logic. Their growth is not constant. It accelerates, slows, sometimes stutters, all while capturing storms, floods, human footsteps, laughter, conflict, and sorrow. They are, quite literally, living archives. Imagine standing beside one. You place your hand on its trunk, and immediately you feel weight, not just of the wood, but of decades of life, of events layered over one another. Listeners from across the globe have written to share their experiences. Lena from the Scottish Highlands recalls, "I spent an entire day with one of these trees. I felt the vibrations of storms long past, of deer moving, of footsteps that had crunched across the forest floor centuries before I was born. The tree remembered. I felt part of its memory, part of the world it had observed." And Carlos from the Amazon says, "I laid my ear against a giant kapok and could almost hear the pulse of the forest through it, the slow rhythm of the centuries, the whispers of rain, the songs of birds long gone. I felt time bend, fold, and unravel around me." Scientific minds struggle to explain this. Dendrochronologists, tree ring scientists, can measure years and events through growth patterns, but these extraordinary trees appear to record more than just rainfall or drought. Some rings appear too rapidly, others too slowly. Some contain chemical traces of human activity, of fires, of storms, sometimes all at once. The speculation is staggering. Are these trees reacting to geomagnetic energy, quantum fluctuations in the soil, or are they connected to the earth in ways we are only beginning to glimpse? The honest answer, we do not know. And that uncertainty, that inability to fully comprehend, is what makes standing beside them both humbling and terrifying. Emotionally, there is weight here, a profound mix of awe, fear, and reflection. You confront your own impermanence. The tree has witnessed centuries. It has watched generations pass. It has absorbed human triumphs and failures alike. And you realize that time, as you understand it, is fragile. That your life, your small moment in history, is contained within the silent testimony of something far older, far more patient, far more alive than yourself. Listener Isabel from Quebec writes, "Standing near one of these trees made me weep. I felt the pulse of history, the rise and fall of things I will never touch, never see. And yet it was comforting. That pulse reminded me that life continues, that memory persists, that time is never truly lost." There is, of course, a cautionary note here. Witnessing such phenomena comes with responsibility. Do not interfere. Do not damage. Observe. Document. Listen. Learn. Treat both the levitating seeds and these time-marking trees with reverence. Survival, in this context, is not just about your physical well-being. It is about maintaining the delicate balance of wonder and respect. And in observing, you learn patience, you learn humility, and you may, just perhaps, Feel the heartbeat of a universe far larger than your own imagination allows. So tonight, as you sit with us, wherever you are, I invite you to imagine that levitating seed hovering just above the soil, choosing its destiny. Imagine that colossal tree whose rings record not only rain and sun, but the ebb and flow of centuries, the whispers of life itself. Feel the awe, feel the fragility, feel the terror and the grace intermingled, because these are not just stories, they are evidence of a world that lives, thinks, and remembers beyond our comprehension. And in that knowledge, there is both comfort and challenge. To live with awareness, to notice, to witness, and to respect the agency of life itself. This is Alex Mercer, your guide to the impossible, reminding you that every seed may float, every tree may bend time, and every moment you spend in their presence is a gift that asks you to pay attention, to breathe, to honor, and above all, to remember that the world around you is far more alive, far more intelligent, and far more miraculous than most of us dare to imagine. Thank you for joining me tonight, friends. As we close the airwaves and the night stretches on, remember the seeds that choose where to root, the trees that bend time, and the quiet intelligence that moves all around us. Step lightly, listen closely, and never forget. Life is far stranger, far more patient, and far more alive than we can ever truly grasp. This is Alex Mercer, reminding you to stay aware, stay curious, and above all, stay in awe. Good night, and may the world around you whisper its secrets just for you.